Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Beamer, owner, operator of Exfilly Dyed Art by Science, and we are back with another blending board tutorial, and today we are going to be using alpaca. Now this is a beautiful chocolate brown alpaca fleece that I bought from Santa Claus Alpacas about almost 3.5 years ago at this point. It was pretty much too good to miss. It was separated with a prime in the seconds, and it was really soft and the greatest color. So I just had to have it, and then I brought it to Korea. And I've been using like little bits in here and there, but I haven't really been using a lot of it, so I still have quite a bit of it left. Anyway, so when I first got the fleece, I gave it a wash in a mesh bag to make sure that I kept the lock structure intact. So you may be able to see here, I've got up at the top, these are the points of the fiber, and this down here is the cut or shorn end. Let me hold it like this so you can see it better. So natural colored, especially dark fleeces, tend to have slightly lighter tips, and that's sort of the case here with this alpaca as well. But you know, alpacas don't have lanolin, but they like to roll around in the dirt, so it's really hard to keep their fleeces clean unless they're coated. And even when they're coated, sometimes like stuff gets worked into their fleece. What is common is like these little bits of debris, like this one here, and there are a couple little pieces there. There's a few in here that you can kind of see. They fall out very easily, but something that I like to do is I'll take the butt end and the tip end and I sort of like shimmy it open a little bit like this. I do this rotating motion, and then I pull a little bit. So this is actually a really great way to open up locks, and I tend to do this also with wool fleeces, you know, from sheep, just to get it open. And you can see that some of this has started to fall out. Not a whole lot. I don't want to bathe in vegetable matter at this point. But, you know, because it doesn't contain any lanolin, it's extremely easy to pick open locks to get them prepared either for spinning directly at the wheel or, you know, what we're about to do, which is carding. And now I have this huge container over here filled with all of these picked open locks. So you can see it's kind of like a amorphous mass here. Which end is up? I don't know. But this is actually a detail that I'm really going for. Alpaca is an extremely slippery fiber. So what I like to do is kind of get it all mixed up, very jumbled, because what I have found that will happen, especially with the blending board, now this doesn't happen so much with my drum carder, but with the blending board, what will happen is the tips, like the bits of fiber, will just sort of like stay together in lock form, and I don't like it because it forms, you can see this little brown spot right here. This is one whole tip of the lock that's all together, and it sort of defeats the purpose of blending it. So you can leave it this way or not, but it's important to know how the alpaca behaves. So when I put this on the blending board, I will show you kind of what I do to make sure that this doesn't actually happen. The reason why I am so retentive about doing it this specific way is because if you're going to practice doing long draw, which I am in the middle of practicing still, it's an ever-going project, what will happen is when this gets drafted out, this piece here, it's going to form a giant chunk. There's not a lot of space between them, so they're all going to want to clump together and stay all cuddly, and I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to have to do is stop and probably draft it out and, you know, interrupt the whole process. So I want it to be as smooth as possible. And the result is a yarn that's kind of like this. This is a yarn that I made using my drop spindle and sort of like a leapfrogging, strumming, long draw method with my drop spindle. And I'm really quite proud of it because it resulted in a very even 2-ply yarn. So yeah, this is a pretty even 2-ply for me. Normally it's really a lot more crazy than this. But alpaca really forms a really nice, it makes a very nice long draw fiber to work with because it's a little bit slippery, so it drafts really easily. It doesn't do a lot of catching on the other fibers, so it's very smooth, but in that sense it's also a little bit kind of a pain in the butt. So if you have your alpaca, get it all picked open so that it's kind of like an amorphous blob like this, and then we'll get into a little description about how I like to put the alpaca on the board, and then we'll come back at the end and have some final words, okay? Stay tuned. Okay, so we have the blending board here set up, ready to go, and it will swivel so that if I need to adjust it this way or this way, it's easy to do. And I have my chocolate alpaca here sort of picked open as best as I can. Probably do a little bit more of this as I apply this. But the important part when putting alpaca on a blending board or using a drum carder or something like that is to make sure that it is picked open really well and that you put it down in a fine layer. Okay? If you put it down in chunks when you're drafting it for long draw, it will sort of clump up on you. It could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, but this is going to show you a way to avoid that. So if it's undesirable for you, then you know what to do to sort of fix it. So I just use my fingers to pull these locks open a little bit more, and I'm just going to sort of like put it in one hand and grab it, right? So I have a little bit of fluff sticking out, and then I'm going to sort of go from the top to the bottom, just placing this on the board like this. So I'm doing like this leapfrog motion. You can see. What I'm doing is I'm letting some of the fibers get caught by the paintbrush, and I'm drafting back a little bit so that there is a little bit of staple length here and then here and then here and then here, so that all of the shorn end and tip end are sort of like overlapping, so that when I pull it all off, all of the fibers are sort of individual at that point. They're not sort of still clumped together or wanting to stick together, and thus making it slightly more difficult to draft for long draw. Okay, pick these open. Tap it down. Like that. Can work with whatever size chunk you feel comfortable with, but the idea is we're layering. Now, I would normally cover this entire board with sort of a thin layer, and then I would keep going over it in layers. So think about the alpaca as watercolor paint. So this is our canvas. We have a paintbrush here, and we're just kind of covering the whole thing with this brown gesso. So painters who do oil painting will start usually with a base of white gesso, and then that sort of gets the whole board primed for adding in some new colors, and it helps with blending. So that's kind of what we're doing here, except instead of using lots of different colors, we're just using the same color multiple times. Okay, And it would be very handy to also have sort of like either a towel to catch the fallout from the fiber, or a bowl or something, or you know, maybe you're just gonna vacuum the floor when you're done. But if it's not super clean to begin with, which, you know, mine is pretty clean but not super clean, then more vegetable matter is going to fall out when you do this process. So it's important to, you know, think about these things before you have a huge mess and you're like, uh-oh, company's going to be here in 5 minutes. It's the worst. I find that it takes longer for me to card the alpaca this way, which is, you know, it's part of the labor of love of what we do anyway. But I find that if I'm gonna do alpaca this way, I want a good chunk of time set aside so that I can put this all on here the way that I want. I don't want to rush and then end up with something that I don't find enjoyable when it comes to spinning. So what I'm going to do is, as I did in the previous promo video, I'm just going to lock these ends, turn them over, I'm going to lift up, draft a little bit, roll, draft up a little bit, roll, roll, like that. And it's a super tiny little rolag. It's you can kind of see the hole in there, right there. But you'll notice the surface is very smooth. Like that. And that's what we were going for when we decided to put the alpaca down in these really thin, tiny layers. Okay, so if we had done the whole board this way, these rolags would obviously be much longer. Maybe if you laid all 4 of these end to end, it would be about the length of a normal rolag. But you can see how smooth they are. They have a very smooth texture. You don't have any of those locks sticking up. And again, that's where the process of opening up the locks, making sure that each individual fiber is sort of, you know, sticking out so that they're not all cuddly together, will produce a nice, smooth, consistent yarn, which we saw here in this one. Okay. There you are, Alpaca Rolags. Mine are cute because they're so little and stubby, but they'll still function well for drafting. But normally you will have the longer version like this one. Right? We did the mini version. So like I said in the beginning, this was a community request video, so if you have future requests, please post below in the comments or on Ravelry or wherever I'm at. You know, I check everything pretty regularly, so if you have something specific in terms of fibers you want me to talk about, or more like techniques, like how do you make art rolags, or, you know, how do you do this or that, whatever, please let me know, and I will add it to the queue so that I can get it made in a timely manner, and hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on the fiber if I don't have it already. So yeah, thanks again for subscribing and liking this video and all my others. I really appreciate it. It keeps me wanting to make more for you because I'm getting really good feedback. So anyway, like this video if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.